Before we dive into one of Scotland's most terrifying and least-known encounters with what lurks beneath Loch Ness, make sure to hit that like button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. What you're about to hear isn't the friendly tourist version of Nessie. It's the dark reality that Highland fishermen knew and feared for generations. My name is Callum MacKenzie, and on the night of August 23, 1933, I nearly died in the black waters of Loch Ness. I was 26 years old, a third-generation fisherman working the loch that had sustained my family since before my grandfather's time. We knew these waters, every current, every depth, every hidden rock beneath the surface. But we didn't know everything, and what we didn't know almost killed us all. Our fishing vessel was called the Mary Catherine, a sturdy 40-foot boat built by my father's own hands in 1921. She'd weathered countless storms on the loch, brought in thousands of pounds of salmon and pike, and never once let us down. That night, she carried 4 souls. Myself as captain, my younger brother Angus, our cousin Fergus MacLeod, and old Donald Campbell, a fisherman who'd worked Loch Ness for 53 years. 53 years. Donald had been fishing these waters since 1880, back when Queen Victoria still reigned, and the Highlands were even more remote than they are now. He knew every tale, every legend, every whispered story about what swam in the deepest parts of the loch. And he'd always dismissed them as nonsense. Superstition meant to scare tourists and sell postcards. Until that night changed his mind forever. We'd set out from Invermoriston just after sunset, planning to work the night nets as we'd done hundreds of times before. August in the Highlands means long twilight hours, the sky not going truly dark until nearly midnight. The weather was calm, the loch surface like black glass reflecting the first stars. Perfect conditions for fishing. "Good night for it," Angus said as we motored out into deeper water, the Mary Catherine's engine puttering reliably. "No wind, no chop. Should have full nets by morning." Fergus was checking our equipment, the heavy nets, the winch system, the gaffs and hooks we'd need for hauling in the catch. Everything was in order, everything routine. This was work we could do in our sleep, work our bodies knew by muscle memory. Donald stood at the stern, smoking his pipe, watching the lights of Invermoriston fade behind us. He was quiet tonight, quieter than usual. I noticed but didn't comment. Donald had his moods, his silences. At 79 years old, he'd earned the right to brood if he wanted. We reached our usual fishing grounds about 2 miles from shore, in water roughly 600 feet deep. The loch at this point is like a massive underwater canyon, steep walls dropping away into absolute darkness. We'd mapped it over the years with weighted lines, knew where the fish congregated, where the currents brought them. Angus cut the engine and we drifted, preparing to deploy the nets. The silence was immediate and complete. No engine noise, no wind, just the gentle lap of water against the hull and our own breathing. The Highlands at night are profoundly quiet, especially on the water. It's a silence that makes you whisper, that makes every sound seem intrusive. "There's a feeling tonight," Donald said suddenly, breaking his silence. "Something's off." We all looked at him. Donald wasn't given to drama or superstition, despite his age and years on the water. If he felt something was wrong, we paid attention. "Off how?" I asked. He knocked his pipe against the railing, scattering ash into the dark water. "Can't say exactly, just wrong. Like the loch is holding its breath." Fergus laughed nervously. "You've been listening to too many tourist tales, old man. Next you'll be telling us about monsters and kelpies." "I've been on this loch since before your father was born," Donald replied, his voice sharp. "I know when something's not right, and tonight, something's not right." I looked around, trying to feel what Donald was sensing. The water was unusually still, yes, and now that he'd mentioned it, there was something odd about the silence. No fish jumping, no birds calling from shore, just nothing. "We're here now," Angus said practically. "Nets are ready. Let's just work quick and get back." It seemed reasonable. We'd deploy the nets, let them drift for a few hours, haul them in, and head home. Simple, routine, safe. We began lowering the first net over the side, the weights pulling it down into the depths. The net was 300 feet long, designed to hang vertically in the water column like a curtain, catching fish as they swam past. We'd deployed hundreds of these nets over the years without incident. This time was different. The net was barely 50 feet down when it stopped. Not snagged on bottom, we were in 600 feet of water. Not tangled, we could feel the weight pulling steadily downward. It just stopped, as if something beneath the surface was holding it. "Give it more slack," I told Fergus, who was manning the winch. "Maybe there's a current catching it." Fergus released more line. The net dropped another 20 feet, then stopped again. Then, incredibly, it began moving. Not sinking, moving sideways. Something was pulling our net through the water, and whatever it was strong enough to overcome the weights and drag it away from the boat. "What the hell?" Angus grabbed the line, feeling it. "Something's got the net. Something big." "Pull it in," Donald said, his voice urgent. "Pull it in now." But we didn't have time. The line suddenly went taut, impossibly taut, and began pulling away from the boat with tremendous force. Fergus struggled to secure the winch brake, but the friction was generating heat, smoking. "Cut the line," Donald shouted. "Cut it before." The Mary Catherine lurched violently to one side, tilting at a dangerous angle as whatever had our net pulled harder. Water sloshed across the deck. I grabbed the rail to keep from sliding overboard, my heart hammering. "Cut it! Cut the bloody line!" Donald was fumbling for his knife, but his old hands were shaking. Angus reached the line with a gaff hook and chopped through it with 3 hard strikes. The line parted with a sound like a gunshot, and the Mary Catherine rocked back to level, all of us stumbling. We stood there gasping, staring at the severed line trailing over the side into the black water. Our net was gone, along with whatever had taken it. "What in God's name was that?" Fergus asked, his voice shaking. "A submarine? Some kind of equipment malfunction?" "That was no submarine," Donald said. He was gripping the rail with white knuckles, his face pale in the starlight. "I've seen submarines in these waters during the war. I know what their pull feels like. That wasn't mechanical. That was alive." "Alive?" Angus laughed, but it was a hollow sound. What could be alive and strong enough to pull a 300-foot net through 600 feet of water? Donald looked at each of us in turn. "You know what? We all know what. We just don't want to say it. The Loch Ness Monster. Nessie. The tourist attraction, the legend, the myth that brought thousands of visitors to the Highlands every year with their cameras and their hope of seeing something mysterious. We'd all heard the stories, of course. Every Highlander grew up with tales of the water beast. But they were just stories. Entertainment for outsiders. Not real. Except something had just dragged our net into the depths with enough force to nearly capsize our boat. "We should go back," I said, making the decision as captain. "We've lost the net, it's late, and—" I stopped. Angus was pointing to the water behind the boat, his hand shaking. "Callum," he whispered. "Look." We all turned. The water behind the Mary Catherine was glowing, not reflecting starlight, actually glowing with a pale greenish luminescence that seemed to come from deep below. And in that glow, we could see movement. Something large was circling beneath us, disturbing the water, making that eerie light pulse and shift. "Bioluminescence," Fergus said, his voice desperate for rational explanation. "Plankton, they glow when disturbed." "Not in these waters," Donald said. "Wrong species, wrong temperature, and plankton don't swim in circles 50 feet below the surface." The glow was growing brighter, and the circling pattern was tightening. Whatever was down there was spiraling upward, coming closer to the surface. Closer to our boat. "Start the engine," I said quietly. "Angus, start the engine now." Angus moved toward the wheelhouse, but before he reached it, the water beside the boat erupted. Something huge broke the surface, just for a moment, just a glimpse, but enough for us to see. A neck. A long, sinuous neck easily 20 feet from water to head, covered in dark gray skin that looked rough, almost armored. The head was small relative to the neck, diamond-shaped, with eyes that caught the starlight and reflected it back at us with an intelligence that was utterly alien. The mouth, if you could call it that, was lined with teeth. Not fangs, but serrated ridges designed for gripping, for holding, for not letting go. It looked at us, made direct eye contact with me, and in that moment, I knew we were being evaluated, assessed, judged as either threat or prey. Then it sank back beneath the surface without a sound, leaving only ripples and that fading greenish glow. We stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. What we'd just seen was impossible, but we'd all seen it. 4 witnesses to something that shouldn't exist. Start the engine. I found my voice again, forcing the words out through a throat tight with fear. Angus ran for the wheelhouse. We heard him hit the ignition. Once, twice, 3 times. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. The Mary Catherine, which had never failed us, wouldn't start. "Again!" I shouted. "Try again!" The engine ground, coughed, died. Ground, coughed, died. The battery was good, the fuel was good, everything was good. But she wouldn't start. And in the silence between attempts, we heard something that made our blood freeze. Breathing. Heavy, wet breathing from just below the waterline. Something massive was surfacing next to the boat, rising slowly, deliberately. We could feel the displacement of water as it came up, feel the Mary Catherine rocking from the movement. "Get the rifles," Donald said, moving toward the equipment locker. "Get every weapon we have." We kept 2 rifles aboard, old Lee Enfields from the Great War, maintained for shooting seals that sometimes damaged our nets. Fergus grabbed them while Angus continued desperately trying to start the engine. The breathing grew louder. Then we heard a new sound, scraping. Something rough and hard was dragging along the wooden hull of our boat, just beneath the waterline. Not bumping accidentally, deliberately scraping, as if testing the strength of the wood, as if deciding whether to breach it. "Show yourself!" Fergus shouted, his voice cracking. He had a rifle raised, pointing at the water, his hands shaking so badly I worried he'd fire accidentally. As if responding to his challenge, the creature rose. It came up on the port side, emerging from the water with terrible slowness. First the head, water streaming from that rough gray skin. Then more of the neck, longer than we'd seen before, rising and rising until the head was a full 30 feet above the deck, looking down at us like we were insects. The body beneath the surface was massive. We could see the dark bulk of it through the water, easily the length of our boat, probably longer. Flippers or fins, we couldn't tell which, were visible as shadows, paddling slowly to keep it stable. Its eyes fixed on us. Those terrible, intelligent eyes that held nothing of mammal warmth or fish blankness. They were reptilian, ancient, and absolutely focused. Then it opened its mouth, and we saw the rows of gripping teeth, the throat that could swallow a seal whole. And it made a sound, a low, resonating call that we felt in our chests as much as heard, a sound that spoke of deep water and deeper time, of something that had lived in these dark waters for longer than humans had walked the highlands. "Shoot it," Donald whispered. "Shoot it before it—" The creature struck. Not at us, at the boat. Its head came down like a battering ram, smashing into the stern with tremendous force. The Mary Catherine shuddered, wood splintering. We were thrown forward, Fergus dropping his rifle, Angus knocked against the wheelhouse. "It's trying to sink us," I shouted, grabbing for the remaining rifle. "It's attacking the boat." The creature withdrew and struck again, this time at the side, its mouth closing on the railing and ripping away a 6-foot section like tearing paper. We could hear its teeth grinding through wood, hear the snapping of planks that had held firm through decades of highland storms. Donald grabbed a gaff, a long pole with a vicious hook at the end, and drove it at the creature's neck as it withdrew for another strike. The hook bit into the gray flesh, and the creature's response was immediate and violent. It thrashed, pulling the gaff from Donald's hands and taking it down into the water. Then it dove, its massive body creating a wave that nearly swamped us. The Mary Catherine rocked wildly, taking on water through the damaged sections. "We're sinking," Angus reported from the wheelhouse. "The damage is below the waterline. We're taking on water faster than we can bail." The shore was 2 miles away. Swimming distance normally, but not in these waters. Not with that thing down there. "Keep trying the engine," I ordered. "Fergus, grab the emergency beacon. We need to signal for help." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Help was miles away. We didn't have time. The Mary Catherine was dying beneath us, settling lower in the water with every passing second. And somewhere below, in the dark waters of Loch Ness, something old and terrible was circling, waiting for us to slip beneath the surface where we would be entirely at its mercy. The real nightmare was only beginning. The Mary Catherine was listing badly now, her stern settling deeper as water flooded the damaged sections. We could hear it sloshing below deck, a sound that every sailor dreads, the death rattle of a boat that will soon become a coffin. "How long do we have?" I asked Angus, trying to keep my voice steady. 10 minutes, maybe 15 if we're lucky." He was pumping the bilge manually, but it was futile. Water was coming in faster than we could remove it. Donald had retrieved a flare gun from the emergency kit and fired 2 red flares into the night sky. They arced upward, brilliant against the stars, then slowly descended under their parachutes, casting a hellish red glow across the loch's surface. Beautiful and terrible at once, a beacon for rescue and a marker of our doom. "Will anyone see them?" Fergus asked. "The Coast Guard station at Fort Augustus might," Donald replied. "Maybe folks at Urquhart Castle, but it'll take them time to reach us, time we don't have." As if to emphasize his point, the Mary Catherine lurched again, settling another foot deeper. The water was now at deck level, washing across our feet, cold and relentless. "We need to get the life jackets," I said, moving toward the storage locker. But when I opened it, my heart sank. We had 2 life vests. 2. For 4 people. We'd been meaning to buy more, had put it off because money was tight, and we'd fished these waters all our lives without incident. Pride and complacency. The twin sins that kill fishermen. "Right," Donald said, looking at the 2 vests. "The young ones take them. Callum, Angus, put them on." "No," I said immediately. "You're 79, Donald. You—" "Exactly. I'm 79. I've had my life. You boys have families, have futures. Put the vests on and don't argue." "We'll share them," Fergus suggested. 2 pairs, holding on together." The water beside the boat exploded again. The creature surfaced 20 feet away, its long neck rising up like a periscope, water streaming from its skin. In the red glow of the descending flares, we could see it clearly for the first time. It was like nothing that should exist in modern waters. The head was definitely reptilian, diamond-shaped with a pronounced brow ridge over those intelligent eyes. The skin wasn't smooth like a dolphin's, but rough and plated, almost like crocodile armor but thicker, more pronounced. The neck was impossibly long, at least 30 feet, perhaps more, with a musculature that rippled beneath the skin as it moved. But the most terrifying thing was its behavior. It wasn't acting like a fish or even a marine mammal. It was calculating, patient, watching us with those eyes that held far too much awareness. It had damaged our boat deliberately. It had waited for the flares to die down before surfacing again. It was hunting us with intelligence and strategy. "Why isn't it attacking?" Angus whispered. "Why is it just watching?" "Because it knows we're trapped," Donald said, his voice hollow. "It's waiting for us to enter the water. Down there, in its territory, we won't stand a chance." The creature's head tilted, bird-like, studying us. Then it dove again, its body creating a massive whirlpool as it descended. The suction nearly pulled the sinking Mary Catherine under completely. "That's it," I said, making a decision. "We swim for shore. Now, while we still can, before the boat goes down and drags us with it." "That's suicide," Fergus protested. 2 miles in the dark with that thing hunting us? "It's suicide to stay here too. At least swimming gives us a chance." I grabbed one of the life vests, thrust it at Angus. "Put it on. Donald, you take the other one." "I will not. That's an order, old man, from your captain. Put it on." Donald's jaw worked, but he took the vest. Angus and he strapped them on while Fergus and I prepared to swim without them. 2 miles, in water that was maybe 55 degrees Fahrenheit, with a monster lurking below. Our odds weren't good. The Mary Catherine gave a terrible groan, her timbers creaking as she settled further. We had maybe 5 minutes before she went down completely. "We stay together," I instructed. "Swim in a tight group. If anyone falls behind, we all stop. Nobody gets left alone in the water. Understood?" 3 nods. 3 terrified faces in the dim starlight. "The shore lights are that way." I pointed toward the faint glow of Invermoriston. "We swim straight for them. Don't stop, don't look back, just swim." We moved to the side of the boat, preparing to enter the water. Every instinct screamed at me not to do this, to stay on the boat as long as possible. But the boat was doomed, and staying with it would only mean drowning when it dragged us down. "On 3, I said. 1, 2. Before I reached 3, the water beside the boat erupted in foam and fury. The creature surfaced directly next to us, its massive head rising up barely 10 feet away. This close, we could see every detail. The rough texture of its skin, the ancient scarring across its neck and head, the way its nostrils flared as it breathed, the slight pulsing of blood vessels beneath the skin. And we could smell it. A powerful fishy reptilian smell mixed with something else, something primal and predatory. It opened its mouth slowly, deliberately, showing us those rows of gripping teeth. Not threatening, demonstrating. Showing us what waited if we entered its domain. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph," Donald breathed. "It's trying to keep us on the boat. It doesn't want us in the water yet." "Why not?" Angus asked. "Because it's playing with us, like a cat with a mouse. It wants us terrified." Donald's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "I've heard the old stories, the ones nobody tells tourists. The creature doesn't just hunt, it torments. There's intelligence there, but it's cold, alien, nothing like ours." The creature held its position, head hovering above the deck, watching us, waiting. "We can't stay here," I said. "The boat's going down whether we jump or not." As if understanding my words, the creature dove again. This time, its massive body scraped along the bottom of our boat as it passed beneath us. We felt the impact, heard the wood splintering further. The Mary Catherine tilted sharply to starboard. "She's going!" Angus shouted. "She's going now!" We had no choice anymore. As the boat rolled, we were thrown into the water whether we wanted to be or not. The shock of the cold hit like a physical blow, driving the air from my lungs. I surfaced, gasping, already feeling the deadly chill seeping into my limbs. "Together!" I shouted, seeing the others surfacing around me. "Stay together!" We grouped up, treading water, watching the Mary Catherine complete her death roll. She went over completely, her hull now pointing at the sky, held briefly at the surface by trapped air. Then, with a final groan and a great rush of bubbles, she sank. My father's boat, my livelihood, my family's legacy, gone in seconds, swallowed by the dark waters. But we had bigger problems than mourning a boat. "Swim!" Donald urged, "before it comes back!" We struck out for shore, swimming in a tight cluster. Angus and Donald, with their life vests, kept easily afloat. Fergus and I had to work harder, our muscles already burning from the effort and the cold. 2 miles had seemed possible on the boat. Now, in the water, it seemed like an impossible distance. We'd covered maybe 100 yards when we felt it beneath us. Not saw, felt. The displacement of water as something massive moved below, passing under us like a submarine. The current from its passage spun us around, broke our formation. "Back together," I called out. "Don't separate." We regrouped, but now we were all hyper-aware of what was beneath us. 600 feet of black water, and somewhere in that darkness, something ancient was circling. "Don't think about it," Donald said, his teeth chattering. "Just swim. Focus on the shore, one stroke at a time." We swam. Every movement felt like it was signaling our position to the creature below. Every splash felt too loud. Every time my foot kicked down into the water, I expected to feel teeth closing around my leg. 5 minutes passed. 10. We'd covered maybe a quarter mile. Still more than a mile and a half to go, and I could already feel hypothermia setting in. My fingers were numb, my legs heavy. Fergus beside me was struggling worse. He'd always been a weak swimmer. "Keep going," I told him. "We're making good progress." "Can't feel my legs," he gasped back. "So cold." "Don't stop moving. The moment you stop, you sink." Then Angus shouted, "Something touched me! Something touched my leg!" We all froze, the worst thing we could do, but instinctive. We looked around wildly, seeing nothing but black water and the distant lights of shore. "What was it?" Donald demanded. "I don't know. Something rubbed against my leg. Something rough." The creature was investigating us, testing us, determining which of us was weakest. "It was probably just," I started to say, but I never finished because Fergus suddenly screamed and disappeared beneath the surface. No warning, no splash. One moment he was swimming beside me, the next he was just gone, pulled down into the depths like he'd been yanked by a cable. "Fergus!" I dove, reaching for where he'd been, but there was nothing. Just cold water and darkness. I resurfaced. "He's gone! Something took him!" "Get back in formation," Donald commanded. "Now, before it takes another of us." We clustered. Together, 3 now instead of 4, spinning in the water, trying to watch all directions at once. The shore seemed impossibly far. The water seemed impossibly deep, and somewhere below us, Fergus was either dead or dying. "We can't help him," Donald said, reading my thoughts. "If we dive after him, we'll just die too. We have to keep swimming." "I can't just leave him," I protested. "You can, and you will. Your brother needs you alive. Your family needs you alive. Fergus is gone. Don't let his death be for nothing." It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but Donald was right. We started swimming again. 3 survivors trying to reach safety while knowing we were being stalked by something that could take any of us at any moment. We'd gone maybe 50 more yards when we saw Fergus again, or what was left of him. His body floated to the surface 20 feet away, face down, arms spread. Even in the darkness, we could see the damage. Something had taken a massive bite from his torso. Something had killed him quickly, at least. Small mercy. "Don't look," Donald said. "Keep swimming." But we couldn't help looking, couldn't help seeing. That was my cousin. I'd known him all his life. We'd fished together, worked together, laughed together. And now he was just meat floating in dark water, a warning of what awaited the rest of us. The creature surfaced near Fergus's body. Its head rose up slowly, water streaming from its skin, and it looked at us. Just looked. Making sure we saw, making sure we understood. Then it dove again, and Fergus's body disappeared with it, pulled down for reasons I didn't want to contemplate. "It's toying with us," Angus said, his voice breaking. "It's playing with its food." "Then we don't let it win," I replied, forcing strength I didn't feel into my voice. "We swim, we survive, we tell people what happened here. That's how we honor Fergus." We swam on through the dark waters, 3 terrified men racing against cold and predator, wondering which would claim us first. We'd been swimming for nearly half an hour when Donald started showing signs of severe hypothermia. His strokes became erratic, his breathing shallow. Even with the life vest, he was struggling to keep his head above water. "Donald, stay with us," I called, swimming closer to him. "Can't feel anything," he mumbled, his lips blue even in the darkness. "So tired." "You don't get to give up, old man," Angus said, positioning himself on Donald's other side. "You've survived 53 years on this loch. You're not dying tonight." But we all knew the statistics. In water this temperature, exhaustion and hypothermia set in quickly. We'd been lucky to last this long. Our time was running out. The shore was closer now, maybe 3/4 of a mile, but it still looked impossibly distant. My own limbs felt like lead, every stroke requiring conscious effort. My teeth chattered uncontrollably, and I'd lost feeling in my feet 10 minutes ago. "We need to rest," Angus said. "Just for a moment, float on our backs, conserve energy." "No," I responded immediately. "We keep moving. The moment we stop, we're dead, either from cold or from what's down there." As if summoned by my words, we felt it again. That displacement of water, that presence of something massive moving beneath us. But this time it was different. This time we could see it. The water around us began to glow with that same eerie bioluminescence we'd seen earlier. And in that ghostly light, we could see the shape passing below us. The creature's body was enormous, easily 60 feet long, perhaps more. Its bulk was wider than our sunken boat, muscular and powerful. 4 flippers or fins propelled it through the water with surprising grace for something so large. It circled us once, twice, 3 times. Each pass brought it closer to the surface, closer to us. We were completely exposed, treading water in the middle of its hunting ground, utterly defenseless. "It's deciding," Donald whispered, his voice surprisingly clear despite his condition. "Which one of us to take next?" "How do you know?" Angus asked. "Because that's what predators do. They identify the weakest prey, and right now," he coughed, water splashing into his mouth, "right now, that's me. We're not letting it take you," I said firmly. "We stay together. It wants one of us. It has to go through all of us." Donald laughed, a weak, rattling sound. "Brave words, lad. But what exactly are we going to do? Punch it? We're in its world now. We're prey." The creature made another pass, this time so close we could have reached down and touched its back. The rough, plated skin looked ancient, scarred by decades, maybe centuries, of life in these waters. How old was this thing? How long had it been hunting these depths? Then, suddenly, it stopped circling and dove straight down, disappearing into the blackness below. The bioluminescent glow faded, leaving us in near-total darkness again. "Why did it leave?" Angus asked. "It didn't leave," Donald said. "It's preparing to strike. From below. That's how they hunt, come up fast from the deep, take the prey before it knows what's happening." "Then we spread out," I said quickly. "Make it harder for—" "No," Donald cut me off. "We don't spread out. That's what it wants. Separated, we're easy targets. Together, we at least have a chance to see it coming." We pulled closer together, forming a tight triangle, our backs to each other, scanning the water in all directions. We couldn't see more than a few feet down, couldn't see what was rising from the depths toward us. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Every piece of floating debris looked like a threat. Every ripple could be the creature surfacing. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might give out before the cold or the monster could finish me. Then Angus shouted, "There! Starboard side!" We spun. A shape was rising from below, pale against the darkness, moving incredibly fast. The creature was coming up like a missile, its mouth already open, targeting us with terrifying precision. "Dive left! Now!" I screamed. We scattered, diving in different directions. The creature breached exactly where we'd been, its massive head exploding through the surface in a fountain of water and spray. Its jaws snapped shut on empty water, missing us by inches. But it didn't submerge immediately. Instead, it thrashed at the surface, its enormous body writhing, creating waves that scattered us further. Its tail, which we hadn't seen clearly before, broke the surface, a massive rudder-like structure that could probably kill with a single blow. "Regroup!" I called, trying to swim toward where I'd last seen Donald and Angus. But the waves from the creature's thrashing made it nearly impossible to maintain direction or see anything. I caught a glimpse of Angus, maybe 20 feet away, struggling in the waves. But Donald, where was Donald? "Donald!" I shouted. "Donald, where are you?" "Here!" His voice came from my left, weak but alive. "I'm here!" I swam toward his voice, fighting against the current. The creature had stopped thrashing and was circling again, slower now, more deliberately. It knew it had separated us. It knew we were vulnerable. I reached Donald. He was barely conscious, his face gray, his body limp despite the life vest. Hypothermia had taken him to the edge of death. "Stay awake," I told him, slapping his face lightly. "Donald, you have to stay awake. Look at me. Focus on my voice." His eyes struggled to focus. "Callum, I'm sorry. I can't make it. Too cold, too tired." "Yes, you can. Angus, where are you?" "Coming!" Angus's voice, closer now. I saw him swimming toward us, his strokes strong despite everything. My brother had always been the strongest swimmer in the family. He reached us, assessed Donald's condition immediately. "He's going into shock. We need to get him out of the water now, or he's dead in minutes." "The shore's still too far," I said, though even as I spoke, I could see the lights of Invermoriston were noticeably closer. Maybe half a mile now. So close, and yet still so impossibly far. "Then we have to swim faster." Angus positioned himself on one side of Donald, me on the other. "We'll tow him, both of us, together. It's our only chance." We started swimming again, pulling Donald between us. It was exhausting work, essentially swimming for two people while already beyond our own limits. But we had no choice. Abandoning Donald wasn't an option, and staying here waiting for rescue that might never come wasn't either. The creature followed. We could feel its presence, could see occasional glimpses of its bulk just below the surface. But it wasn't attacking. Not yet. Why? "It's waiting for us to weaken further," Angus panted as we swam. "Waiting until we can't fight back at all." "Then we don't give it that satisfaction," I replied, though my own arms felt like they were made of stone, though. Every breath was agony, though I couldn't feel anything below my waist anymore. We swam on, stroke after stroke after stroke. The shore grew slowly closer. 400 yards, 300, 200, so close. We were so desperately close. That's when the creature struck again. It came from behind us this time, rising up silently until its head was right there, looming over us like a tower. We didn't even know it was there until its shadow fell across us, blocking the stars. We looked up, and it looked down, and in that moment, I saw something in its eyes that was worse than hunger or aggression. I saw curiosity. This thing was studying us, learning from us, understanding our desperation and our hope. And then it acted. Its head came down, not to bite, but to push. It shoved us underwater with its snout, pressing us down 15 feet, 20 feet. My lungs burned. Donald went limp in my arms. Angus thrashed, trying to swim back up, but the creature held us down with casual ease. This was it. This was how we died. Not eaten, not torn apart. Simply drowned. Held underwater until our lungs gave out, and we breathed in the loch's black water. My vision started to tunnel. My lungs screamed for air. Donald wasn't moving anymore. Angus's struggles were weakening. Then, suddenly, the pressure released. The creature withdrew its head, and we shot to the surface like corks, gasping and choking, coughing up water, desperate for air. "Why?" Angus gasped between coughs. "Why did it let us go?" I had no answer. The creature had us. Could have held us under until we drowned. But it let us surface. Let us breathe. Let us live. For now. "It's playing," Donald rasped, somehow still conscious. "Playing with its food. Toying with us. This is how it entertains itself. Decades, centuries, in these waters. So few chances to hunt something that can think, that can feel fear. It's savoring us." The thought was more terrifying than simple predation. A mindless animal we could understand. But this was cruelty. This was sophisticated malice. This was evil. "We're not giving it that satisfaction," I said, finding some reserve of strength I didn't know I possessed. "We're reaching that shore, and we're telling everyone what's down here. We're making sure it never gets the chance to do this again." We swam on. The creature circled but didn't attack. It had made its point. It could take us whenever it wanted. We were swimming at its pleasure, living at its whim. 100 yards to shore. 50. 25. We could see individual rocks on the beach now. Could see the pier at Invermoriston. Could see people gathering. Our flares had been seen, and help was assembling. Boats were preparing to launch, though they'd never reach us in time. 10 yards. 5. My feet touched bottom. Solid ground. Sweet, blessed solid ground. We were in water shallow enough to stand, shallow enough that we should be safe. But the creature wasn't done. It came in fast, its body moving through the shallows with frightening agility for something so large. Its head rose up one final time, towering over us as we struggled toward shore, Donald barely conscious between us. It opened its mouth, and for a moment, I was certain we'd come all this way just to die 10 feet from safety. But it didn't attack. Instead, it made that sound again, that deep, resonating call that we felt more than heard. A sound of warning or claim, or perhaps just acknowledgement. We'd survived its hunt. We'd earned the right to live. For now. Then it backed out into deeper water and dove, its massive tail breaking the surface one last time before it vanished into the depths, leaving only ripples and a memory that would haunt us forever. We staggered onto the beach and collapsed, 3 survivors of something that shouldn't exist, carrying one barely living elder who'd seen things no modern man should see. People rushed toward us, fishermen we knew, locals from the village, a doctor who'd been dining nearby when our flares went up. They wrapped us in blankets, asked frantic questions we could barely answer. "What happened out there? Where's your boat? Where's Fergus?" But we couldn't speak, could only stare back at the dark waters of Loch Ness, knowing what lurked beneath, knowing we'd never be able to prove it, knowing nobody would believe us anyway. The monster had let us live, but it had taken our boat, our livelihood, our cousin, and our peace of mind. And somewhere in those black depths, it was waiting for the next fool who thought the legends were just tourist tales. We'd learned the truth the hard way. The Loch Ness Monster was real, and it was far more terrifying than any tourist attraction could ever convey. Word count, approximately 2,200 words. Running total, approximately 7,200 words. Section 4, Aftermath and the Silence. Nobody believes. We spent 3 days in the hospital at Inverness. Donald nearly died from hypothermia. His core temperature had dropped so low the doctors said it was a miracle his heart hadn't stopped. Angus and I recovered faster, though the frostbite cost me 2 toes, and Angus the hearing in his left ear, damaged when the creature held us underwater. But the physical damage was nothing compared to what came next, trying to make people believe us. The police came first, 2 constables from Fort Augustus who took our statements with barely concealed skepticism. They wrote everything down dutifully, the net being pulled away, the creature attacking our boat, Fergus being taken. But I could see it in their eyes. They thought we were either lying or mad. "So you're telling me," the senior constable said slowly, "that the Loch Ness Monster, which has never been proven to exist despite decades of searches, not only exists, but deliberately attacked your boat and killed your cousin?" "Yes," I said firmly. "That's exactly what I'm telling you." "And you all saw this creature clearly?" "Clear as I'm seeing you now. All 3 of us. 4, counting Fergus before it took him." The constable exchanged a glance with his partner. "Mr. MacKenzie, we're aware you lost your boat and your cousin. That's a terrible tragedy. But surely there's a more reasonable explanation. Perhaps your boat struck a rock in the dark. Perhaps your cousin was injured in the accident and drowned before you could save him. There are no rocks where we were fishing, and Fergus wasn't injured in an accident. He was dragged under by a creature 60 feet long with a neck like a serpent and teeth designed for gripping prey. Right. The constable closed his notebook. We'll file your report. In the meantime, we'd advise you not to speak to the press about this. Stories like this can damage the Highland tourism industry, and that affects everyone's livelihood. They left, and I knew our official report would be quietly buried. Dismissed as the ravings of traumatized men, perhaps influenced by alcohol or hypothermia-induced hallucinations. But the press found us anyway. The newspapers were already full of Loch Ness Monster stories in 1933. Earlier that year, a couple named the Spicers had reported seeing a large creature cross the road near the loch. Then a man named Hugh Gray had taken a photograph, blurry and indistinct, but enough to spark international interest. The tourist trade had exploded, with visitors flooding the Highlands hoping to catch a glimpse of Nessie. Our story was different. We weren't tourists seeking thrills. We were local fishermen who'd lost everything: our boat, our livelihood, our friend, to a real predator that had hunted us through the dark waters. But that's not how the newspapers told it. "Monster attacks fishing boat," screamed the headline in the Inverness Courier. But the article was skeptical, quoting experts who said large animals in Loch Ness were impossible, that we'd likely panicked in a storm, that grief and hypothermia could explain our vivid hallucinations. The Scottish Daily Express was worse. Local fishermen jump on monster bandwagon. They implied we were attention-seeking, trying to capitalize on the tourist interest in Nessie. They noted that we'd lost our boat and suggested we might be angling for insurance money or public donations. "They're calling us liars," Angus said bitterly, throwing down the newspaper. "Saying we made it up for money or attention." "Let them," Donald said from his hospital bed. He'd recovered enough to speak, though he looked like he'd aged 20 years in those 3 days. "The creature doesn't need our testimony to exist. It was here before we were born, and it'll be here after we die. Whether anyone believes us or not changes nothing." "But Fergus," I said. "His family deserves to know what really happened to him. His family knows what we told them. Whether others believe it is their problem, not ours." Fergus's funeral was held 4 days after the attack. His body was never recovered. Somewhere in the cold depths of Loch Ness, the creature had claimed him. We buried an empty coffin, while his widow wept and his 3 children stared at us with confused, accusing eyes. Why had we survived when their father hadn't? Why had we come back when he was still down there, in the dark water, alone? I had no answers that would comfort them. The fishing community's response was complicated. Some of the older fishermen, men who'd worked the loch for decades, pulled us aside privately and told us they believed us. They'd seen things too, though never as clearly or as violently as what we'd experienced. Strange wakes on calm days, nets torn by something far stronger than any fish, glimpses of something large moving just below the surface. But publicly, they stayed silent. The loch was their livelihood. Stories of a dangerous predator would kill the fishing industry. Better to keep quiet, to work carefully, to respect what lived in the depths and hope it would leave you alone. The tourists, ironically, were thrilled by our story. They came to Invermoriston in droves, wanting to hear about the attack, wanting to take boat tours out to where the Mary Catherine went down, hoping to see the monster for themselves. They had no idea what they were really asking for. They thought of Nessie as a curiosity, a photo opportunity, a friendly mystery. They didn't understand that what lived in Loch Ness was a predator, intelligent, patient, and deadly. I tried to warn them, stood on the pier and told any tourist who'd listen, "Don't romanticize what's down there. Don't anthropomorphize it. It's not friendly. It's not curious in a benign way. It's a hunter, and if you're foolish enough to be in those waters at night, you're prey." Most ignored me, called me colorful, asked to take photos with the survivor of the monster attack, treated the whole thing like entertainment. Only a few, usually the ones with experience in nature, with hunting or fishing, understood the fear in my eyes. They'd heard that tone of voice before, from men who'd seen predators in their element. They knew I wasn't exaggerating or seeking attention. They knew I'd seen death swimming in the dark. The insurance company refused to pay for the Mary Catherine. Our policy didn't cover acts of God or unknown natural phenomena, and they certainly weren't going to accept monster attack as a valid claim. We were left destitute, no boat, no income, no compensation. Angus and I found work on other boats, but it wasn't the same. Every time we went out on the loch, we felt it down there, watching, waiting. Sometimes we'd see a strange wake. Sometimes the sonar would show something large moving below us. But we never stayed out after dark, never worked the deep water, never took the risks we once had. We'd learned our lesson. The loch belonged to something else. We were just visitors, tolerated as long as we respected the boundaries. Donald never went on the water again. He retired from fishing, spent his remaining years in a cottage near the shore, watching the loch from his window. He died in 1936, 3 years after the attack. The official cause was heart failure, but I knew better. Part of him had died in those cold waters, dragged down by what he'd seen, what he'd experienced. At his funeral, he was buried with a fishing gaff in his coffin. His family thought it was a touching tribute to his life's work. But I knew the real reason. Donald wanted to be armed, even in death, just in case what he met in the afterlife was worse than what he'd met in the depths of Loch Ness. I'm writing this in 1965, 32 years after that terrible night. I'm 58 years old now, with grandchildren who think of Nessie as a cute legend, who own stuffed toys of the friendly monster and want to go on tourist boats to look for her. I don't let them, ever. And when they ask why, I tell them the truth, though they don't believe me any more than the police or the newspapers did. Because what's in that loch isn't friendly. It isn't a mystery to be solved or a creature to be protected. It's a predator that's been hunting these waters for longer than humans have lived in the highlands. And if you're unlucky enough to meet it after dark, when it's truly hunting, you'll understand why the old Scots feared the water kelpies. You'll understand that some legends are warnings, not entertainment. But they just laugh and think Grandpa's being dramatic. The way I once laughed at the old stories, before I learned they were true. Angus stopped fishing entirely in 1952. He'd been out on the loch with a new crew when something large struck their boat from below. Not hard enough to sink them, but hard enough to make the message clear. He came home, sold his share in the boat, and never went back. "It's still there," he told me that night, his hands shaking as he poured whiskey. "After all these years, it's still there, still hunting, still watching. And it remembers us, Callum." I know it sounds mad, but when it hit our boat, I felt it. It was sending a message. I let you live once. Don't push your luck. I believed him. Because I'd felt the same thing, late at night when I'd look out at the dark waters. A sense of being watched. A feeling that something down there remembered the 3 men who'd survived its hunt. And it was waiting, patient, eternal, wondering if we'd be foolish enough to enter its domain again. We never did. Angus and I lived our lives on land, as far from the loch's edge as we could manage while still calling the Highlands home. We watched the tourists come and go, watched the Nessie hunters with their cameras and sonar equipment, searching for proof of what we'd seen all too clearly. They never found it. Oh, there were photos, blurry images that could be anything, and sonar readings that showed large objects moving in the deep, but never proof. Never evidence solid enough to convince the skeptics. And I was glad. Because proof would bring more people, more boats, more foolish souls venturing onto the loch at night, thinking they could control or understand what lived there. Better for the legend to remain vague. Better for people to think of Nessie as possibly extinct, possibly never existing at all. Better for the creature to be left alone in its ancient domain, hunting the fish and seals that were its natural prey. Because the alternative, humans actively seeking out a 60-foot predator with the intelligence to hunt strategically and the cruelty to toy with its prey, would only lead to more deaths, more Ferguses pulled screaming into the dark, more families left to mourn empty coffins. The loch keeps its secrets, and some secrets are better left undisturbed. I'm Dr. Adrian Thorne, a marine biologist specializing in cryptozoology and unexplained aquatic phenomena. I've spent the past 15 years researching Loch Ness and interviewing survivors of unusual encounters. In 2019, I was given access to Callum MacKenzie's personal journals, documents he'd kept hidden from the public for decades, only to be opened after his death in 1998. What I found changed everything I thought I knew about Loch Ness. Callum MacKenzie died at age 91, having outlived both his brother Angus, who passed in 1989, and every other witness to that 1933 attack. His journals span 65 years, from 1933 until just days before his death, and they painted a picture very different from the friendly Nessie narrative the tourist industry promoted. The entries were meticulous: dates, times, locations, observations. Callum had spent his entire adult life documenting sightings, collecting testimonies from other fishermen, recording sonar anomalies, and tracking patterns. He'd become an amateur researcher, obsessed with understanding what had killed his cousin and nearly killed him. What emerges from his research is terrifying in its consistency: the pattern of attacks. Callum documented 47 separate incidents between 1933 and 1997, where boats on Loch Ness experienced unexplained mechanical failures, structural damage, or encounters with large aquatic animals. 22 of these resulted in deaths or disappearances. The official records list these as drowning accidents, equipment failures, or weather-related incidents. But Callum's journals include testimony from survivors, fishermen, boat operators, even a few tourists who describe the same thing: a massive creature, reptilian in appearance, intelligent in behavior, and deliberately aggressive toward vessels after dark. Why isn't this common knowledge? Because of what Callum called the conspiracy of silence. Local fishermen won't speak publicly because they depend on the loch for their livelihood. Tourism operators won't speak because the friendly Nessie myth brings millions of pounds to the Highland economy. And officials won't speak because acknowledging a dangerous predator would require action they're not prepared to take. So the truth remains hidden. Bodies are quietly recovered or declared lost. Insurance claims are settled without publicity. Families mourn in private. And the creature continues to hunt in the deep waters, largely undisturbed by human awareness. What is it? Based on Callum's descriptions and my own research, I believe what lives in Loch Ness is a surviving population of plesiosaurs, marine reptiles that supposedly went extinct 65 million years ago along with the dinosaurs. I know how that sounds. I'm a scientist. I deal in evidence and peer review. But consider the facts. 1. The physical description matches. Every credible witness describes the same thing: a long neck, 20 to 30 feet, small head, large body, 40 to 60 feet, 4 flippers, rough gray-green skin. This precisely matches reconstructions of plesiosaurs like Elasmosaurus. 2. The behavior is consistent. Plesiosaurs were ambush predators. They hunted by stealth, using their long necks to strike at prey from unexpected angles. They weren't fast swimmers. They waited for prey to come to them. This matches the creature's patient, strategic hunting style. 3. The environment is suitable. Loch Ness is deep, 755 feet at its deepest point. Dark, peat runoff limits visibility, and connected to the ocean via the River Ness. It's possible, not proven but possible, that a small breeding population has survived here, isolated and largely undetected. 4. Similar reports exist worldwide. Lake Champlain, Vermont, Lake Okanagan, Canada, Lake Tianqi, China, and dozens of other deep, dark lakes have remarkably similar reports. Different cultures, different time periods, but the same description: long-necked aquatic reptiles that hunt intelligently and avoid detection. Either this is the most consistent mass hallucination in history, or something really is down there. The intelligence factor. What troubles me most about Callum's account, and what separates it from typical predator behavior, is the creature's apparent intelligence. It didn't just attack the Mary Catherine randomly. It strategically destroyed the boat, forcing the men into the water where they were most vulnerable. It toyed with them, holding them underwater, then releasing them. It allowed 3 survivors to escape while taking Fergus as prey. This isn't instinctive behavior. This is problem solving. This is a level of cognition we don't typically associate with reptiles. Modern research shows that crocodilians are far more intelligent than we once believed, capable of tool use, cooperative hunting, and even learning from experience. If plesiosaurs survived to the present day, they've had millions of years to evolve. What Callum encountered might be the apex predator of a lineage that's been perfecting its hunting strategy since before humans existed. The skeptics' arguments. I'm obligated to present the counter-arguments. Skeptics point out that no bodies have ever been found. True, but Loch Ness is massive, 23 miles long, up to 755 feet deep, with terrible visibility. We've only explored a fraction of it thoroughly. The breeding population would be too small, possibly. But deep-sea fish can have incredibly low population densities and still maintain breeding viability. And we don't know how long these creatures live. If they're as long-lived as some reptiles, a small population could be sustainable. Someone would have gotten clear photos by now, you'd think. But the creature is clearly intelligent enough to avoid cameras. Its surface is rarely, primarily at night, and mostly in poor visibility conditions. And honestly, clear photos exist. They're just dismissed as hoaxes because what they show is impossible. Plesiosaurs breathed air. They'd be seen constantly surfacing. Modern marine reptiles like sea turtles can stay submerged for hours by slowing their metabolism. In the cold waters of Loch Ness, a reptile could potentially extend that even further. And who's watching the loch at 3 a.m. in winter? When would these surfacing events be observed? Callum's journals included something I've never seen acknowledged publicly: testimonies from Highland residents going back centuries. He'd collected stories from parish records, old letters, even oral histories passed down through fishing families. The creature has been reported since at least the 6th century, when St. Columba allegedly encountered a water beast in the River Ness. The sightings continue through medieval times, usually called water horses or kelpies, through the Industrial Revolution and into the modern era. That's 1,400 years of consistent reports, all describing roughly the same thing, all from the same location, all dismissed as folklore or misidentification or hoaxes. But Callum's journals made me realize something. The witnesses aren't idiots. They're fishermen who've spent their lives on the water. They're boat operators who know every species that lives in Scottish waters. They're people who have no reason to lie and everything to lose by speaking up. When a 79-year-old fisherman with 53 years of experience tells you he saw a 60-foot reptile with intelligent eyes, maybe we should listen instead of immediately dismissing it as impossible. Callum's last journal entry was dated February 12, 1998, just 3 days before his death. It's brief but haunting. Took my great-grandson down to the shore today. He's 7, same age as Fergus's youngest was when we lost him. The boy wanted to throw stones in the water. I let him, but I stayed between him and the loch. Always between. Just before we left, I saw a wake moving through the water maybe 50 yards out. V-shaped, moving against the current. Something large swimming just below the surface. It stopped directly across from where we stood. Didn't surface. Just stopped. Like it was watching us. Watching the boy. Then it dove, and the wake disappeared. I've seen that pattern before. 65 years ago, right before it attacked our boat. It's still there, still hunting, still remembering. I'm old now, too old to be afraid of death, but I'm terrified of what will happen when everyone who remembers the truth is gone. When the only stories left are the tourist tales of friendly Nessie. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand. What lives in that loch isn't friendly. It never was. And pretending otherwise will only lead to more deaths. 3 days later, Callum MacKenzie suffered a heart attack and died in his sleep. His journals were boxed up by his family, forgotten in an attic for 20 years, until his granddaughter found them and, remembering I'd once interviewed her grandfather about his experience, sent them to me. Since taking possession of Callum's journals, I've investigated 3 incidents that match the pattern he documented. July 2015. A fishing charter capsized in calm weather at night. 2 tourists drowned. The captain survived and reported something struck the boat from below, something massive that felt deliberate. His testimony was attributed to trauma and grief. October 2017. A pleasure boat's hull was damaged by collision with submerged object, according to the official report. But the damage pattern showed gouges consistent with teeth, large, serrated teeth designed for gripping. The boat owner told me privately that he saw a long neck rise up beside the boat before it struck. May 2019. A kayaker disappeared during an evening paddle. His kayak was found intact, but with massive dents in the hull, as if something had tried to bite through the fiberglass. His body was never recovered. The official verdict was accidental drowning. His widow told me he'd texted her minutes before he vanished. Something big in the water, not a seal. Holy God, it's massive. 3 incidents in 4 years, 3 deaths, all dismissed as accidents, all matching Callum's documented pattern. Here's what troubles me most. On any given summer day, hundreds of people are on Loch Ness. Tour boats, pleasure craft, kayaks, paddleboards, even swimmers. They're out there because they believe the Loch Ness Monster is either extinct, mythical, or friendly. They don't know they're entering the hunting ground of an intelligent predator that's been perfecting its strategy for millions of years. They don't know that every credible witness describes the same thing: a creature that hunts strategically, that shows intelligence far beyond typical reptilian behavior, that seems to enjoy the psychological aspect of the hunt as much as the kill. They think they're safe because it's daytime, because there are other boats around, because nothing's ever happened to tourists. But Callum's journals show that's not true. It's just that when tourists die or disappear, it's explained away. Equipment failure, operator error, medical emergency, drowning. The truth is carefully hidden to protect the tourism industry. And I understand why. The Highland economy depends on Loch Ness tourism. Admitting there's a genuine danger would devastate the region economically. But at what cost? How many more Ferguses have to be pulled into the dark before we acknowledge the truth? As a scientist, I should call for comprehensive study, systematic searches using modern technology, DNA sampling from the water, continuous sonar monitoring, camera traps at various depths. But as someone who's read Callum's journals, who's interviewed survivors, who's seen the fear in elderly fishermen's eyes when they talk about what's down there, I think we should leave it alone. If a breeding population of plesiosaurs has somehow survived in Loch Ness, they're likely the last of their kind. Functionally extinct everywhere else, clinging to existence in this one deep, dark, isolated lake. Yes, they're dangerous. Yes, they occasionally kill people. But humans are in their territory. We're the intruders. And honestly, we kill far more of them than they kill of us. Every year, boats drop trash in the loch. Propellers injure creatures. Fishing nets trap and drown them. Sonar equipment disrupts their hunting and communication. We've turned their ancient home into a theme park, and they've responded with remarkable restraint, considering. What happened to Callum and his crew in 1933 was terrible. But they were fishing at night in deep water during what might have been breeding season, when the creatures would be most protective and aggressive. They were unlucky. Most people who visit Loch Ness never see anything, never experience any danger. The creature, or creatures, mostly avoid humans. It's only when we push into their territory at the wrong time, in the wrong way, that tragedy occurs. If you're planning to visit Loch Ness, I offer this advice: stay near shore. The deep water is where encounters happen. Don't go out after dark. 90% of documented incidents occur between sunset and sunrise. Respect the water. This isn't a theme park. It's a wild ecosystem with a predator at the top of the food chain. Listen to the locals. If a Highland fisherman tells you not to fish a certain area or not to go out in certain conditions, believe them. They know things tourists don't. Don't assume it's extinct. The lack of recent clear photos doesn't mean it's gone. It means it's smart enough to avoid cameras. And most importantly, don't mistake absence of aggression for friendliness. The creature isn't friendly. It's simply not always hungry. There's a difference. Callum MacKenzie spent 65 years trying to warn people about what he'd experienced. He died knowing nobody believed him, that his testimony had been dismissed as the ravings of a traumatized man seeking attention. But his journals prove he was telling the truth. The consistency of his observations, the corroboration from other witnesses, the pattern of incidents that continues to this day, it all points to the same conclusion. Something dangerous lives in Loch Ness. Something ancient, something intelligent, something that doesn't distinguish between prey and humans who venture too far into its domain. I've submitted my findings to every relevant scientific journal. All rejected publication. Too sensational, they said. Insufficient evidence, despite the testimonies and documentation. Career damaging to be associated with cryptozoology nonsense. So I'm doing what Callum did, documenting it anyway. Preserving the testimony. Making sure that somewhere, somehow, the truth is recorded. Because eventually, maybe not in my lifetime, but eventually, someone will prove definitively that these creatures exist. And when that day comes, I hope we remember Fergus MacLeod, and Donald Campbell, and Callum and Angus MacKenzie, and all the others who tried to warn us, who survived encounters they never should have had, who spent their lives haunted by what they saw in the dark waters. They deserve to be believed, and we owe them the respect of finally listening. This is my last recording. The doctors say my heart's giving out. Too many years, too much strain. I'm 91 years old, which is more than I expected after that night in 1933. More than Fergus got, more than Donald got, more than the dozens of others whose names fill my journals. I'm recording this because my family thinks I'm crazy. The tourists think I'm a bitter old man trying to ruin their fun, and the scientists think I'm a liar or a fool. But I know what I saw, what I experienced. What's still down there, swimming in those dark waters, waiting for the next fool who thinks legends are just stories. To anyone listening to this after I'm gone, I'm not crazy, I'm not lying, I'm not seeking attention or money or fame. I'm a fisherman who encountered something that shouldn't exist according to modern science, but which exists nonetheless. The Loch Ness Monster is real. Not the friendly tourist attraction, not the cute stuffed animal in gift shops. The real thing. A 60-foot predator with intelligence and cruelty and patience beyond anything you can imagine. It let me live in 1933. I don't know why. Maybe I wasn't worth eating. Maybe it was full after taking Fergus. Maybe it just wanted survivors to tell the tale, to spread fear among humans, to mark its territory. For 65 years, I've lived with the memory of that night. The cold water, the sound of Fergus screaming, the feeling of those teeth gripping teeth just inches from my leg, the intelligence in those eyes as it decided whether we lived or died. I've dreamed about it every night for 65 years. Sometimes I'm back in the water, swimming desperately for shore. Sometimes I'm on the boat, watching it rise from the depths. Sometimes I'm Fergus, being pulled down into darkness, knowing I'll never see the sun again. But the worst dreams are the ones where I'm the creature, where I'm down in the cold depths, ancient and patient and hungry, where I look up and see the dark shapes of boats crossing above me, and I decide which one to hunt, where I experience the joy, yes, joy, of stalking prey that can think and feel fear. Those dreams terrify me because they feel true, because I think, on that night in 1933, the creature and I connected somehow. It saw into me, and I saw into it. And what I saw was older than humanity, older than civilization, older than everything we think we know about the world. We're not the apex predator we think we are. Not in the water. Not in the deep places where things from an ancient age still survive. My advice to anyone hearing this, respect the water, respect the dark, respect the legends that have survived for centuries because they're trying to tell you something true. The Loch Ness Monster isn't your friend. It isn't interested in being photographed or studied or protected. It's a predator. It hunts, it kills, and it's still there, after all these years, after all our technology, after all our certainty that we've mapped and understood every inch of the world. We haven't. We're still children playing at the edge of dark waters, ignorant of what swims below. Fergus learned that truth 65 years ago. Donald learned it. I learned it. I just hope you don't have to learn it the same way we did. Because if you do, you'll spend whatever life you have left knowing that humanity isn't as safe as we pretend, that monsters are real, and that some of them are far more terrifying than our legends ever suggested. The water remembers. The depths remember. And somewhere down there, in the cold darkness of Loch Ness, something remembers me. The man who survived. The one who got away. I'm dying now. My heart's failing. But even as I go, I wonder, will I finally escape it? Or is death just another depth, another darkness, where ancient things wait? I guess I'll find out soon enough. To Fergus, who never got the chance to grow old, I'm sorry we couldn't save you, cousin. I'm sorry you're down there in the cold and dark. I'm sorry we survived when you didn't, but I never forgot you. And I never stopped trying to warn others about what took you. Maybe that counts for something. Maybe. So that's the story of what really happened on Loch Ness in August 1933. Not the friendly tourist tale, not the cute legend. The real story of 4 fishermen who encountered a predator that shouldn't exist, and how it destroyed their lives even though 3 of them survived. Callum MacKenzie died believing nobody would ever take his testimony seriously, but his journals survive, his recordings survive, and most importantly, the creature he encountered survives, still swimming in the dark waters of Loch Ness, still hunting, still waiting for the next time humans venture too far into its domain. Do you believe it? Do you think Callum was telling the truth? Or was he traumatized by a tragic accident that his mind transformed into something more bearable? A monster instead of random chance? Let us know in the comments. And if you've ever been to Loch Ness, if you've ever felt watched from the water, if you've ever seen something that didn't quite make sense, share your story. Because maybe Callum was right. Maybe the creature needs witnesses. Maybe it wants us to know it's there, wants us to respect its territory, and remember that we're not always the dominant species. And remember, if you ever find yourself on Loch Ness after dark, in deep water, and you see a wake moving toward you that doesn't match any known animal, don't wait to identify it. Don't try to photograph it. Don't assume it's friendly. Just get to shore as fast as you can, and pray it's not in the mood to hunt. Because the Loch Ness Monster is real. It's dangerous, and it's still there, swimming in the depths, waiting for the next fool who thinks legends are just stories. The water remembers, and so do the survivors. If we're lucky, we'll never have to add your name to that list.